invisible misalignment that hardens your psoas does not respond to stretching because the rigidity is not born from a locked muscle, but from a silent shift in the axis between body and gravity. This misalignment grows without warning, and when the center shifts forward, the psoas is called in to hold the weight that alignment stopped holding. Stretching without correcting this distortion is treating the symptom while the cause remains intact. The tension you feel does not come from a lack of flexibility. It comes from a body that has lost trust in its own foundation. You are going to learn a 3-pillar gravitational adjustment that repositions the center over the heels, reorients the pelvis, and reconnects brain and hips. This protocol gives the skeleton back its ability to support itself without tension, releasing the rigidity that stretching was never able to reach. But there is something the nervous system needs to recognize before it can let go. Leaving this video now means missing the precise instant in which your body identifies where the misalignment is and how to correct it through gravitational adjustment. What you are about to discover is going to show you why stretching failed, and why gravitational adjustment is what finally allows the psoas to release. When the weight of your body projects beyond the support base that your heels should provide, the center of gravity migrates forward and the ground ceases to be perceived as a safe foundation. The body starts to float over a chronic instability that the brain interprets as imminent falling. In that moment, something deep is summoned to hold what alignment stopped holding. This silent distortion reorganizes everything around the lack of safety. Hermetic traditions describe the body as a vertical column between heaven and earth, the axis mundi where the creative force descends and manifests in matter. When that axis tilts, when the plumb line is lost, creation contracts along with it. The channel through which intention should flow turns into a trench where everything has to be held. Verticality was not just posture. It was a condition for the invisible to find form in the visible world. The psoas is the only muscle that connects the lumbar spine to the femur, crossing the center of the body like a bridge between trunk and legs. When the brain detects that the center has shifted and there is no reliable base, it recruits the psoas as an emergency stabilizer. The rigidity does not come from muscular weakness. It comes from a survival strategy in which the psoas is called in to hold what alignment lost, keeping you upright when the axis is no longer doing that on its own. Somatic neuroscience has discovered that the brain does not distinguish real danger from structural danger. When the weight projects beyond the base, the autonomic nervous system activates the same defense circuits it would use to respond to an external threat. Polyvagal theory shows that the body out of balance remains in a state of defensive mobilization or subtle collapse, interpreting postural instability as a continuous threat. The psoas then lives in constant semi-contraction because the brain still perceives that you could fall at any moment. The rigidity you feel when you get out of bed, the disproportionate tiredness in your back in the middle of the day, the sensation of carrying invisible weight in your hips are signs that this distortion is at work. The body is saying it does not trust the floor, that it does not feel a real base, that it needs to hold everything on its own, because alignment with gravity has been broken. But there is someone who lived this experience in a visceral way, who tried stretching, strengthening, adjusting, and only found relief when she discovered how to reposition her own axis. That person's story illuminates what you have just understood. Karen was 42 and worked as an accountant at a small company. Her routine required hours sitting down, reviewing balance sheets and monthly closings. But her body charged a disproportionate toll for every movement. Getting up from her chair in the middle of the afternoon brought hip stiffness that seemed to pin her legs to her torso. Her lower back would light up without warning, and walking to the file room at the back of the office demanded an effort that didn't make sense for the distance covered. She had already tried physical therapy focused on strengthening the core, thinking that stronger muscles would fix the instability. She did yoga 3 times a week for months, seeking flexibility that never really arrived. Myofascial release with a foam roller brought momentary relief, but the rigidity always returned, as if something deeper kept everything locked. Stretching the psoas was part of her morning routine, but the feeling of locked hips and reactive lower back remained intact, especially when she needed to stand for long periods. The most unsettling sensation was the constant weight projected forward, as if her body were always leaning toward a fall. Karen noticed she was breathing shallowly, that the air did not go past her chest, and that the fatigue in her back was disproportionate to the effort of the day. Sleep didn't restore her. Waking up brought stiffness. It felt like she was carrying something invisible that her body could never release, even when she tried to relax. It was during a casual conversation with a colleague that she heard about a bodyworker specialized in gravitational reorganization. The colleague mentioned that he worked with something called structural integration, observing how the body relates to gravity before touching any muscle. Karen booked a session. When he saw her standing, he watched her for almost a minute in silence before pointing out something no one had ever mentioned. Her center was shifted forward. Her heels had lost their function as a base. The psoas was holding what the axis had lost. He offered a 3-pillar protocol. They started with repositioning the center over the heels. Karen stood with her back to the wall, about 10 centimeters away, and he asked her to feel where the weight in her feet touched the ground. In the first few minutes, something changed. Her lower back began to release effortlessly, as if her body had finally found where to rest. Her breath dropped, her hips softened. She felt, for the first time in years, that there was real ground beneath her feet. What Karen discovered in that moment is the same adjustment you are about to experience now in your own body. The first pillar begins with a somatic reading of your own misalignment. Stand up, barefoot if possible, and notice where the weight in your feet touches the ground. Don't judge, just notice. Most people feel the weight concentrated in the front part of the feet, in the toes and at the base of the metatarsals, while the heels seem almost floating. This distribution reveals that the center of gravity has migrated forward and that the body has lost its connection with the real base. Now, move close to a wall and stand with your back to it, about 4 inches away. Let your hands lightly touch the wall behind you, just as a support reference. Gently bend your knees, without forcing, and start transferring the weight to your heels. Feel the heel bone pressing into the ground, as if it were rooting into the earth. The contact needs to be firm, not hard. It is a pressure that anchors, not that pushes. As the weight redistributes backward, observe what happens in your lower back. It may begin to release without you needing to do anything. The exaggerated curve that kept the psoas in tension begins to lessen because the body has finally found where to rest. Your breathing changes. The air flows down more easily into the abdomen because the diaphragm has space to move. Stay in this position for at least 1 minute, breathing slowly, feeling the ground beneath your heels. The second pillar is pelvic reorientation. Still keeping the weight on your heels. Bring one hand to your iliac crest, the bone you feel at the side of the hip. The other hand goes to the pubis at the front of the pelvis. Feel the tilt between these 2 points. Most of the time, the pelvis is tipped forward, creating the anterior tilt that keeps the psoas in constant contraction. Now, without forcing, make a micro movement of posterior tilt. Imagine you are bringing the pubis slightly upward toward the navel, while the tailbone descends toward the floor. This movement does not need to be big. It is a millimetric but deep adjustment. As the pelvis reorients, the psoas receives the message that it no longer needs to hold. The lower back lengthens, the rib cage aligns over the pelvis, and the axis between heaven and earth begins to be restored. Breathe in this new configuration. Feel how the breath flows without obstruction, how the weight is more evenly distributed in your feet, how the tension in your hips diminishes. Now integrate conscious breathing with pelvic adjustment. Inhale deeply, allowing the abdomen to expand. Exhale slowly, and as you exhale, gently intensify the posterior tilt, as if the tailbone were descending even more. Repeat this 5 times. With each exhale, the psoas releases a little more. With each inhale, the body stacks itself more precisely over the reclaimed base. You are reversing the defensive flexion pattern that kept everything locked. Before completing the protocol, there is something essential about Karen that needs to be revealed. Karen continued the adjustment for weeks, practicing the repositioning and pelvic reorientation every day. In the first 2 weeks, the morning stiffness diminished in a way she did not expect. Getting out of bed no longer brought that hip locking. Walking to the car in the morning no longer required the disproportionate effort of before. Her lower back stopped lighting up in the middle of the day, and she noticed she could stand for long periods without feeling the invisible weight pushing everything forward. But what surprised her most was the change in her breathing. Karen had always breathed shallowly and thought that was just anxiety. When the axis reorganized, when the psoas finally released, the air began to flow down to the abdomen without effort. The sense of constant alert diminished. She went back to walking long distances on weekends, something she'd given up because her body couldn't sustain it. Projects that had been stalled for months once again had space in her life because her body stopped being an obstacle. What Karen felt is exactly what you are beginning to notice now. The axis returning, the psoas releasing, the base reclaimed. The body is finally trusting the ground. The third pillar is neuromotor adjustment, which reconnects brain, feet, and hips. Step away from the wall and start walking slowly around the space. With each step, bring your attention to the heel that touches the ground first. Feel the contact of the bone with the surface. Notice how the weight rolls from the heel to the front of the foot, and how the hip moves from this reorganized center. The psoas now participates in the movement functionally, mobilizing the hip, not holding the spine. Still standing, Make small weight transfers from one foot to the other. Shift the weight completely to the right leg, feeling the right heel firmly on the ground. Then transfer to the left. Repeat this 10 times, slowly. With each transfer, the cerebellum is learning where the real center of your body is. The nervous system is recalibrating its relationship with gravity, and the psoas is being released from its role as permanent guard. Now integrate the 3 pillars. Reposition the center over the heels. Reorient the pelvis with the gentle posterior tilt, and walk with attention on the feedback from the ground rising through the posterior chain of the legs. Feel how the body moves from a stable base, not from a chronic compensation. This is new body memory being recorded. Defense is no longer necessary. The axis is restored. The psoas has returned to its original vocation. The central protocol is complete. Now comes the moment to seal this reorganization in your body. The physical marker that proves the reorganization is in the breath that now descends into the abdomen effortlessly, in the lower back that relaxes when you stand, in the sensation of weight distributed equally in both feet. The hips have stopped reacting to the slightest movement with tension. This is the sign that the misalignment has been corrected and the psoas has returned to functional tone. The body has regained trust in its own base. To anchor this reorganization, use a simple gesture. Stand up. Bring a gentle pressure of the heels into the ground, as if you were rooting, and take 3 deep breaths. As you breathe, bring one hand to the iliac crest and feel the vertical axis between your feet and the top of your head. This gesture takes 30 to 60 seconds and can be repeated in any context, discreetly, whenever you need to reconnect with the reorganized center. When you feel the rigidity returning to the hip or the lower back lighting up for no apparent reason, go back to the repositioning over the heels. Adjust the pelvis with the gentle posterior tilt. Integrate conscious breathing and repeat internally as you make the adjustment. My axis supports me. My center trusts. This protocol turns what you have learned into a portable tool for the coming days, weeks, and months. What has been sealed in the body now opens space to understand what was truly reclaimed. What was truly reclaimed goes beyond the rigidity that released or the lower back that relaxed. It is an axis that has gone back to being a channel where intention descends and becomes action. Not a trench where everything has to be held. A base that allows you to create without collapsing halfway through. The psoas stopped living in defense because the center went back to trusting the ground. What changed was not just posture. It was the capacity to sustain your own life without constant sacrifice. This gravitational adjustment is only the beginning. There are other layers of somatic reorganization waiting to be accessed. Other knots of inherited trauma crystallized in different regions. Other bridges between gravity and consciousness that the channel explores. The misalignment you corrected today is one of the doors. There are others, and each one reveals a new territory of bodily freedom and presence. Ida Rolf used to say that when gravity passes through the skeleton in an orderly way, healing happens spontaneously. Peter Levine adds that trauma is not in the event, but in the incomplete response that still remains. When the axis is restored, when there is trust in your own base, the structure stops resisting existence and once again becomes a temple habitable by divine presence. Gravitational reorganization is, at the same time, somatic healing and a return to the sacred. If this knowledge touched something deep in you, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and activate notifications so that this content can reach more people who carry the same invisible misalignment. Share it with those you recognize need to reclaim their own access. For those who wish to support the creation of this kind of rare and profound content, consider becoming a member of the channel. Your contribution sustains the creation of practices that exist nowhere else. Write in the comments, "I correct the invisible misalignment and free my Psoas." This statement anchors the practice and manifests the transformation in the vibrational field. The written word seals what was lived. To continue exploring other somatic reorganization techniques available on the channel, click on the video that is appearing on the screen now. There is much more to discover about how the structure can once again become a vehicle, not an obstacle. Perhaps the greatest mystery is not how we stay upright, but what we do with freedom when we finally stop defending ourselves from gravity and start dancing with it.